Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir El-Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will go through the bases of medical devices. We'll try to help you to understand the first steps that you have to follow when you are considering a medical device. So when you are trying to have a medical device on the market. And for that, I have with me Heikki Pitkänen, that will be helping us for making this move and to defining those steps. He is the CEO and founder of Lean Entries, and he will help us and also tell us what is his solution for that. So, Heikki, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Morning, it's a pleasure to be in your podcast. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Heikki, as usual, as I'm asking to my guests, to make just a small introduction, and then we can go through the topics.
Very good. I've been in the medical device industry for some almost 20 years already. First starting from the product development side and slowly starting to understand that the standards and the regulations play a very meaningful part in this industry. And wanted to learn more. I worked in many startups. Some were complying well. Some I built a QMS for them myself, a quality management system, and then had the opportunity to turn to work for a notified body. So I took the challenge. I was leading the team at the notified body, and the challenges followed. Of course, there were many startups, especially, who were knocking on our door, trying to get a certificate, asking for CE marking, but we could only tell them that they are quite far from being CE marked. There were some examples like false standards taken into account, and many times of problems that the startups wouldn't perhaps know from the very beginning if they didn't have the resources to go into that detail. Then I spent some 5 years working for notified bodies and joint standardization. So I've been active on that side as well. And I'm attending the advisory board meetings of the Senelec for healthcare standards. And now, since 3 years, I've been an entrepreneur, providing a digital solution for the startups, especially for universities, for people who know little about regulations, and wanting to put them on a very steep learning curve regarding the basics, really what we're talking about today as well.
Great. So you are in Finland, is it correct?
That's correct, in the Nordics. We're in Finland.
Great. So, Heikki, as I've said, and as you also mentioned, there is some startups that are maybe trying to enter into the medical device field. Maybe startups that have, for example, some softwares and don't really understand all the regulations. So as we discussed together, there are 3 first steps that those companies or startups have to consider and to understand before really to move forward on their projects for having a medical device on the market. So those first steps are, if I can say, basic ones, but it can raise a lot of questions. So let's start maybe at the first step. So the first step is the qualification of your medical device. So the question that we have to answer here is mainly, is your medical device a medical device, or is your product a medical device? So how can we do that, or how can people do that?
Thank you, Bonner. It's really sounds like a simple question, but it's really complicated.
Okay.
And something you need to focus quite a lot in the beginning, even though later, when you flow into your systems and start working in it, these questions start to have less meaning. But these are items that when you scan through the regulations and all the guidances, you really need to go plentiful of documents, many articles, and dive into the annexes to find out what if my device is a medical device, and later about the classification. And if you think of a startup who has very limited resources to do this, they might many times go wrong and might not find the right answers quite easily.
I had just maybe for the story, I had some people also contacting me and asking me, is my product a medical device? I had the story of a subcontractor or a supplier of components for wheelchair, so cup holder, all this kind of thing that you can attach to a wheelchair. And he was thinking that those components were accessories to a medical device. And I mentioned to him that it's not really the definition of accessory to a medical device, because this is also something that has, this is something that the wheelchair can work without that. It's not something that is really critical for a wheelchair, so you should not really consider that as a medical device. But there is a lot of misconception or misunderstanding of, is this product really a medical device? Is this product should be having a technical file, should get through a notified body and this and that? So is there a technique or something that people have to look at to really not make this mistake?
Many times the answer is very straightforward. It's clearly a medical device. But in those cases where it's on the borderline, or you come from the perspective of your business, and you might want to stay out of the medical device perspective, and perhaps you are providing a training service that would not be a medical device, but in the instance when you mix in patient-specific information, it becomes a medical device. That kind of considerations, and they are plentiful, and they are all over. What you would need to do is to go into the guidelines provided by the European Commission. There are qualification and classification examples in those guidelines, and there is a borderline case manual for everyone to go through. And then there is
the MedDev guideline, if I can say, that can help you. There is the borderline, as you mentioned. So I will try to put that also on the show notes as a link so that people can go directly and see that.
We can do that, yeah.
Yeah, so now that that people have some kind of guidance or documents to define if they are medical device or not. I had also made a video for people if they are really interested, where I try to explain how to define if your product is a medical device. It's just a simple video where I try to simplify the definition, because it's a really huge definition for a medical device. So yeah, if you want to go there, I will also put that on the show notes. But Heikki, now that people already have now the thinking of my product is or not a medical device, is there some products that before were not medical device and now are medical device with the new medical device regulation?
Well, especially in the software field, where there are lots of different types of software in the healthcare environment, the new MDCG guideline for medical device qualification and classification, it makes things a little bit clearer on what is a medical device and then what is the classification for those devices. Especially in that field, everyone who is providing a software in any parts of healthcare domain, they should go into this document and really carefully study it and what it tries to say, because it also states very clearly, and this is a new statement in it, that not every type of software is a medical device and CE markable. It's not related to the risk that the product poses for the patient, because every patient management system poses such a risk if it fails. But it really lays down the rules that you must go through to define if your software is a medical device.
Yeah, I look at the MDCG and they put really a lot of examples of what is and what is not a medical device. So I think it's a good source also of information. And as usual, I will put that also on the show notes for the audience.
Yeah, that's good. And also one advice would be that despite if your device would not be a medical device, you would want to stay out of that realm, but you are introducing something very critical to the healthcare domain, I would still make it according to some medical device standards. That would be quite beneficial for your business as well. You would gain an advantage for your competitors.
Yeah, agree. And there is a quite new section of the MDR that qualifies some products that are that have no medical device purpose or no medical purpose as medical devices. So can you tell us more about that?
There are some items like implants that are used for fun, and some eye contact lenses that just have a color for fun, or some brain stimulators that don't have a medical purpose. And now this new medical device regulation in EU, it contains the list in an annex, listing all these types of devices that should be brought under the MDR, so that they produce it according to the best practices to make them safe.
Yeah, exactly. And this is this is maybe a surprise for some people or some manufacturers, so that will discover that because they were not regulated before as a medical device, and now they will be. So if you are making those kind of products and you have some questions, then really check the medical device regulation and check if you are really on the scope, because if you are, you have really a lot of work to do to then be able to place your products on the market. Okay, Heikki, so now that we have, if I can say, described or tried to give all the resources possible for people to qualify their product as medical device, the next step is the classification. So as soon as you confirm that your medical device is a medical device, then you have to classify it. So can you tell us more about the classification?
Well, the classification in Europe, in the MDR and the IVDR, it is very much similar as it was with the directives. It is based on rules. So you must go, the first rule is to go through every rule for classification. So if your device is, again, for example, software, you would need to go through the software rule 11, but you will also need to consider all other active device rules from the annex of the MDR. And then the classification for in vitro diagnostic devices, IVDs, it has changed quite dramatically. So in the early days, it was a listing of different types of devices and putting them into risk categories based on that list. But now they are also categorized based on rules, just like in the MDR. So there are in the medical device sector, there are classes from 1 through 2A through 2B to 3, and in the IVD sector, they run from A to B to C to D.
Yeah, I think it's as you mentioned, really a major change because now it can be maybe more difficult for those companies to try to understand on which class is my device, and the changes in terms of the rules, and really go through all this new method to classify their products. But yeah, it's really similar. They try to harmonize that between the MDR and the IVDR. It's really a similar method with different rules. And then it gives the classification with the lowest risk to the highest risk. And then this will define the rest of your conformity for your device. But is there any guidance to help also people on the classification of their product?
Again, many types of devices are very simple to classify. You find the example just by hitting the find command on one of the guidance documents, the MedDevs, and you're there. But many times again, the question is much more complex. You land on borderlines, and you really might want to keep as low a risk class as possible in many cases, because it has some implications whether you're in class 1 or class 2A. And it's also a matter of the small print, because you might need to understand that if you are a class 1 device, it also has a meaning if your device is a measuring device, it has a measuring function, or if it's sterile and put into market in a sterile condition, or if it's a reusable surgical instrument. In those cases, a notified body is needed to assess that part of your device. So it doesn't make a great difference to class 2A devices anymore that also require a notified body, just like every higher
Yeah, as you mentioned, so usually class 1, they don't need a notified body, but when they have those specific functions, as you mentioned, sterile, measuring function, or reusable, surgical, reusable, then they need a notified body. What you mentioned specifically that the notified body will review just this part. So they will review just the sterilization process. They will review just the measuring function, or they will review the reusable part of the device. But they should not review the full design of the device. Is correct?
That's kind of correct. But everything is related to everything. So if you provide a measuring device, the notified body will need to go deeper into your technical file to understand the measuring functionality. And also when they audit your quality management system, they need to look at how you produce validated measuring functions. And that also contains everything you have in your quality management system. Does it produce, do you keep management reviews to cover all of that? Do you analyze your data from your quality management system to really review what you're doing regarding that measuring function, because it's quite central to your intended purpose?
So in terms of classification, so we have the European classification, but every country has its own classification. So the US, the China, Japan, etc., etc. So is there some differences? So if my class is low risk in Europe, can it be low risk in the other countries, or is there any similarity or differences?
Let's say that there aren't any great differences. And the point is that if you have a medical device, you will need to comply to much of the same rules anyway. So I would rather raise the bar and do great business with the great quality management system rather than try to put your bar as low as possible, because that may create a lot of trouble and hassle in your business. So there are differences. For example, the FDA gives a lot of exemptions to the lowest risk class devices or even class 2 devices, but you still benefit from putting everything into a well-flown quality management system and really rely on that in your business.
Okay, so what we are doing in one country can also help for the other countries. So we should not just think that if I'm doing something to have my products on the market due to this class, it should be all done from zero for another country. They are mainly trying to harmonize a lot of things. There is this new program called MDSAP, so where we have the medical device single audit program, where they are trying really to harmonize the requirements to put a product on the market, which is a great initiative. So I see something that it's showing that they are trying really to harmonize things. So now that we have that we qualified our products as a medical device, and that we do understand what is the classification of our device, so class 1, 2A, 2B, or 3, or class A, B, C, D for IVDR, what is the next step? Why do we need those classification? What should we do then?
Well, depending then on your risk class, the 1 and the A, they are the low risk classes. The 3 and the D, the IVD, they are the highest risk classes. And this classification tells us, when you follow the articles and the annexes of the MDR or the IVDR, they tell the level of activities that you will need to set in your quality management system and in your technical file for the product. And well, let's start from the lowest risk class.
Okay.
So it's a conformity route to go, the options that you have to go in the market. If it's a risk class 1 and it doesn't have this measuring function, it's not provided sterile, or it's not a reusable surgical instrument, that is a type of a product that you label on your own. And the same thing in the IVD sector. If it's a class A device and you don't provide that as a sterile product into the market, then it's on yourself. You provide this declaration of conformity and you mark the product. But the requirement nowadays in the MDR and the IVDR is still to have a full quality management system to cover that. In the past directives, they didn't have that.
And so just to be clear with the people, so it means that they are self-certifying, so they are doing that by themselves. They should still create the technical documentation. They should still create everything, but there will be no notified body, no external organization that will come and inspect those files and documents. They should still register their products in the countries where they will be selling that because they are class 1. And so maybe just to explain to people why they still need to have a technical documentation or everything when nobody will come and check that.
Well, the thing is that someone might come and check it.
Exactly.
So it's the competent authorities in each member state of the EU. They have the mandate to come and check. They do some audits that they plan ahead, and they try to pick perhaps the most dangerous ones of the class 1 devices, or some devices that they've heard something bad perhaps about, and sampling those companies and auditing them. And they also have the possibility to make an unannounced audit for these companies. So you should really have everything in a good shape. And again, I must remind you that it's not about the document or showing that you're in compliance, but it's about your business, and to keep that well fluid and doing good business. All that documentation is for your marketing material. It's for your business needs, really.
Yeah, it's clear. So be careful, still have the right documentation in place, still have the right activities in place, just to check that your product is still suitable for the market and that you get the feedbacks regarding the adequacy, the safety of your product. Because if you don't have that, if there is any competent authority that is coming to audit you and they find that you are not really complying to the regulation or to the MDR or IVDR, then I suppose they can make you out of business immediately. Is correct?
That is correct. They have that power. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, okay, now we have class 1 and we clarified what means self-certification, what are the duties. What are the other routes, or how people should put their products on the market if they are more other than class 1?
When it goes above class 1, then you will need to consider the 3 annexes from the end of the MDR or the IVDR. Those would be the annexes 9, 10, and 11. And 9 would be something that I would basically recommend to everyone. It's where your conformity is based on a full quality management system, covering every activity that is required in the MDR or the IVDR, and the technical file of your product. And that's where the notified body comes sampling your device technical files. And depending on if you just have one product, of course, sampling is quite simple. If you're a startup especially, you show that. But if you have something, if you're a bigger company, you have plentiful of devices, there's a meaning to the sampling. So if it's a class 2A device compared to a class B device, they take less samples. If it's a class B device, they take more samples. And when you go all the way to class 3 devices, you must show compliance with every product basically that you provide.
Yeah, exactly. So as we said, so it's risk-based. Lower is the risk, lower is the sampling, higher is the risk, more they will review, and more they will ask you to provide some documents. Annex 9, as you mentioned, is really recommended because they are doing a full check, so meaning that the auditor is coming and checking everything. And I think this is something that is available to all the different classes, so class 2A, 2B, and 3. But what are the other options? So you mentioned also Annex 10 and 11. So what are the differences between those two other annexes?
Annex 10 speaks about type examination, and 11 is about production quality. So the 11 is kind of like the narrowed down version of the Annex 9 of the full quality system. But there are some tricks in it, so you will need to be careful to follow all the articles within that annex. And the 10 to type examine something, I would consider that only if you have something the size of a room, for example, something you provide once a year into the market, pressure chamber, for example, or a full set of MRI or something like that. It might be worthwhile thinking over if you use the Annex 10. But a good rule of thumb is that follow the Annex 9, and that's the simplest way to go.
And we have also, additionally to that, there is also for high-risk products, an additional check, if I can say, that the European Commission has to perform. So what is it exactly?
Well, when you go to the risk class 3, and if I remember correct, to some risk class 2B devices as well, there is a procedure.
Active, yeah.
Yeah, you will need to the documentation of the product will go through a specific department of the European Commission who checks on it, and that's in addition to the notified body. It's actually the responsibility of the notified body to provide that documentation to them, so they won't be dealing directly with you, but through the notified body. That's what I understood, and then the notified body and this department will have the possibility to debate on the product as well, and it is really an additional scrutiny on your high risk product compared to the past, and you will need to consider some timelines there, so because it might take months to get your device through.
Yeah, so mainly we are talking about expert committees that the European Union has to put in place. They are actually recruiting experts if you want to be on those expert committee. As of yesterday, I think, when we are recording this episode, they had extended also the recruitment for the IVDR regulation, because I suppose they didn't have enough people. So if you are interested to be an expert to an expert committee, so please reach out to the European Commission. I think there is maybe a website on the European Commission place, so that to go and to check and to see what are the conditions, and then for you maybe to apply as an expert. We need you. We need medical device companies need you, because without those experts, we cannot really have our products on the market. So please also consider this as an option for you to be an expert for the European Commission. Okay, Heikki. So what now can we do? So then we have our product. It's a medical device. We have the right classification. We decided which route we should go, and as you said, you recommend really to go to Annex 9 for the route for the conformity assessment. So now, as I have all those information, what is my next step? What should I do with that?
This is one part of the essentials that you need to take into account in the very beginning. So knowing what your device is, to qualify it, classify it, to know on what level you play, and these options that are myrtle of articles and annexes within the MDR. Take some experience perhaps to go through all that. So perhaps use some help, or use someone in your organization who has experience. But there are other things to consider. So I would want to highlight the importance of starting the clinical evaluation from literature reviews very early on, because it's a place where you find competition information, benchmarks, state-of-the-art information regarding what is the intended purpose of the device. And the intended purpose is actually something that we would need to highlight. The intended purpose also defines what your device is, if it's a medical device or not, and it has a lot to do with the classification. And you can play around with it, so you find the right one. You might want to reduce what you state about your product. So that's one, the intended purpose. And I'd like to add more. So there's a risk assessment that you need to do. Do the early thing, even on a post-it note, very early. Just start writing those risks down that you are already thinking of. And from all of that, then it will evolve into practicalities, quality management system, technical file that is really in compliance with the regulations.
So then, as you said, so there is still some work to do after that, and there is some information to compile, some documents to get, and asking the support of a consultant is also something that maybe is a good idea to avoid to lose time and to have to redo things 10 times and maybe to make some mistakes. So just now that we went through all those steps and that people really understand that they have to go through this to know what exactly they have to do for putting their products on the market. Let's talk more about your solution. So I think your solution can really help them to accelerate this phase for understanding their products and understanding if their product is a medical device, the classification, and which conformity assessment they can go through. So can you tell us more about it and its name first, and what exactly your company is doing to provide some support to the medical device community?
Thanks, Bonner. We call the service entries, and we like to talk about digital regulatory runways when we talk about entries. So you can consider a pile of documents that you need to take into account. It might have the MDR and lots of guidance documents, or the IVDR and a load of guidance documents. And your product may be a borderline case between medicine and a medical device, or personal protective equipment and a medical device. And you need to take these things into account. So what we have done, we've taken these almost 40 documents, and we've taken these 3 topics. We've taken the qualification, the classification, and the conformity assessment options, and we've reorganized that information into a flow. So it's a wizard that you go through. There's a clever logics. So this specific service contains some 175 questions and some 700 results in the end, but each one of you will only go through a set of 20 questions max. And that contains the qualification, classification, and the conformity assessment part. So instead of really going through that pile of paper, we have put those questions that are meaningful for you into entries, so you can go through them. And the service provides you the terminology and other guidance and examples, everything that is printed in those 40 documents in an intuitive format in front of you. And you might land on very difficult interpretations still, but you land on them in a matter of minutes rather than being in the haze, especially if you're a startup, for the first months of your work. Many companies go too far without taking these things into account. And
so as we always say, so it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. So if you are not doing the right things from the beginning, you will maybe get the wrong route or the wrong assessment, or then your project can be in danger because you didn't follow the right path. So by going through your solution, mainly you tried really to summarize all what is on the regulations to help the companies to reach to the objective, or to this final step where you really understand your products and what you have to put the product in the market more easily. So I tested your tool. So yeah, there is a lot of questions, if I can say. This tool can be for people that are really trying to just understand what is the class of their product, if their product is a medical device, and what route to go. Or it can be also educational for people that are consultants maybe, or people that are trying now to move to the medical device field, because there is all the comments and attachment to it that are linked. So each time we are talking about a definition, there is a definition that is also visible. We are talking about a risk assessment or a conformity assessment. We have also the annexes and where it's coming from, etc. So we have a link of all the information. So for people that really want to understand and be educated, it's also a good tool. So Heikki, can people test this tool? So how is it working now?
They can. It's there are two entries modules. There is one for the old directives that are still naturally good. Yeah. But there's another one for the MDR and the IVDR. The directive part is free for anyone to try out for free. But for the MDR and IVDR, we can also provide a promotional code through Easy Medical Device that you can then utilize.
Thank you for that. So I will put the code in the document. So will we? So I think we'll have also a document that people can download where we have a summary of what we discussed today on the episode, and maybe you can put also the code there so that people can get it and then use your solution and test it. So what will they have with this promo code?
They will have full access to the system for we can set a time for about 3 months.
Okay.
So they can dive into the system and browse it as much as they like.
Okay, good.
It will require a subscription to our system.
Thank you for that. So I hope people will really test it, because I think, as I've said, it's really an important step to go through to understand if your product is a medical device, what is the class of your product, and which conformity assessment route you have to go through to put your product on the market. So I will put all those information on the show notes. So please go on the show notes at podcast.easymedicaldevice.com. And you will see all the information that we talked about today. And you will see also the links for the downloadables that Heikki offered generously to the audience of this podcast. So thank you, Heikki, for that. So is there anything else from your side? So first, maybe where people can follow up with you?
We're in the web in www.leanentries.com.
Okay.
That's where you will find us, and check our library. It gives you some good documents to follow up. The service has a few more treats and goodies, so you might want to go and find those out. We match you with the notified bodies according to your device type as well, so it's more than the 3 steps. And we're evolving, and we're putting more information in it as we can.
Great. So thank you for that. So for the audience, again, thank you for following us on easymedicaldevice.com. So on this podcast, so Medical Device Made Easy podcast. And thank you also for all the people that already made some reviews on Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and also Spotify. Really interesting. So thank you for that. I saw some good things and also some suggestions, and I'm really interested to take that. And as you may know, I'm also delivering some bonus episodes. So I started a series now with Stefan Bollininger from Beyond Quality. And we had already some episodes released, but I'm also trying to get a new guest to make those small episodes, those small bonus episodes. So please don't forget to go to subscribe to the podcast, to also make some reviews. It's really helping me. And also to use Alexa. I'm trying to have more people using Alexa or Google Home, because I also put the podcast on those devices. So Heikki, thank you for your help. Thank you for all the information that you are providing. And I really encourage people to go to visit your website, so Lean Entries, and to test your solution, so Entries, so to qualify their products as a medical device, or to understand what is exactly their products and how they can put this product on the market. So Heikki, then I wish you a nice day, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Good day to you too, Moira, and you are doing a splendid job for the community. Thanks.
Thank you very much.